Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill is seeking the Democratic nomination in the Garden State, and the boys are back to sort out all kinds of stuff. The Point starts right now. Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill is one of 6 candidates for the Democratic gubernatorial nomination in New Jersey. It's a very tight race. There are 6 candidates. You're currently, according to the polls, leading the pack, but it's become much more intense in the last few weeks. I wonder what your prescription for winning the race is.
Well, I think what people in New Jersey want to see is a different kind of leader. The status quo isn't working for a lot of people. New Jersey's become really unaffordable in housing, and utility costs are set to go up, and health care. And so I think having a vision for the state that is really compelling is what's is why my candidacy is doing so well. And that's what I intend to do, is make sure we're building houses to drive down cost, making sure that we are investing in new power, new clean cheap power to drive down utility costs.
Let's see, what do you mean by new clean cheap power? Do you mean nuclear power? Do you mean wind power, which is, by the way, not a big fan? The president is not a big fan of that. So how can you do that? Well,
immediately we need to invest more in solar. So we have a lot of opportunity in community solar, putting on state land, like landfills, like state buildings, putting utility grade solar out. We've only gone up about 25%, and the rest of the country on average has gone up in solar about 150%. So that's an immediate opportunity. But yeah, I think long-term nuclear. We really have to figure out a pathway here. I think there's about 6 other states that would like to move into this space. We can have an economy of scale, have the federal government take on some of the risk of building this out. But I have to tell you, I am a firm believer that the state that figures out how to build the power of the future and drive down utility costs and carbon emissions is the state that's going to lead in innovations, and I want it to be New Jersey.
But is the future nuclear, or is the future solar, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination. I mean, we really have to, if we are going to meet the power needs, there's different innovations in generation that New Jersey has to take advantage of. And right now we're not. We're buying power in the marketplace, which, quite frankly, in our region is coming from West Virginia, for example, coal-producing state. We also have huge problems with our grid provider, which has really screwed up the market, not put new, clean, cheap power into the grid. So as governor, I'm going to force them to act as a better steward of our grid, or we're going to make some changes.
I have to ask you about NJ Transit. It's something that especially voters in this area are really concerned about. And you have not only the threat of a strike coming up very soon, but the question is, it's been underfunded. People complain constantly about the quality of service. If you got elected governor, what would you do? How would you find the funding to make this a transit system for the 21st century?
I love how you just put that, because right now it's not. In fact, a lot of our transit lines were developed in the 1800s. That's a lot of the towns in my district were built along the train line. And so on day one as governor, I'm going to make sure I'm building out the transportation of the future. So looking at our state, where are the new areas of development? Where are businesses moving to? Where are we under-resourced, like in the South, the Glassboro-Camden line, making sure we are able to build that out and really having a vision. And when you do that, you also can look across the world at how they fund transit systems. And it's transit-oriented development. It's making sure that those businesses and communities that grow because of the state investments in transit are actually helping with that support for the transit system.
But where do you find the money for all this? I mean, listen, it sounds wonderful, pie in the sky, but you have to find the resources. I mean, would you take some money from the gas tax, for example, and put it towards NJ Transit? Or is there a new funding source, a tax of some kind, that you could raise in order to raise money for transit?
Well, I think what we have to do first and foremost in New Jersey is look to spend some of this money more efficiently. We have, for example, the highest property taxes in the country right now.
We do.
And it's really driving an affordability crisis. So we have to do several things to drive down costs. One, we have to build more houses. I mean, that is just a no-brainer, and we have to do it in a way that's going to make sense for people, where people want to live. A lot of people want to live around these transit hubs. So where are those spaces where we can repurpose already been built upon land, like in Trenton or in Atlantic City, areas of growth that people really want to see in the communities? And then we can really build them out. There's other opportunities for accessory dwelling units, for example, especially with people who want to have, you know, their kids or their parents coming back home and helping them live there and helping them afford New Jersey. But we also have to cut red tape and bureaucracy. The state is infamous for it. And right now you see some of the building projects taking up to 4 years just to get permitted. And you look next door at governors like Josh Shapiro, who've driven down, you know, the permitting for small businesses by 90%. So we can do it in New Jersey, and we have to do it there if we're going to grow.
But is there enough money in all of that, getting rid of red tape, to pay for all these ideas? Don't you have to consider other options for funding?
I think what we have to do right now is consider all options on the table, but right now, too, we are facing a huge hit from the federal government. Yeah. So whether it's the cuts to Medicaid, the proposed cuts to Social Security, the cuts to the Department of Education, these are all areas where New Jersey taxpayers have sent federal taxes to the government with the understanding that the federal government is going to run some of the programs that make our state run. And if they're not going to do that, then we need to claw that money back into New Jersey. And with all of that on the table, that's why I think we need such strong governors right now. And you look at the governors across the nation taking this administration to court over the tariffs, making sure they're acting on rights and freedoms and protecting those within states and against the federal government. So this is why I'm running for governor, because I think we in New Jersey can chart out a different path forward that is going to be a strong rebuke to the attacks on our state from the federal government.
So this race, according to the polls, is extremely tight. Although you are ahead with the last poll said 17%, there are 5 other candidates that are splitting the vote, some with 12, Steve Fulop with 12, and then going on down the line. I wonder, you know, it seems like it's heating up because the primary is only a month and a half away, and Newark Mayor Ross Baraka has been personally going after you, especially on the wealth gap, trying to say that, making fun of your insistence that in order to change the wealth gap, you have to make sure that everybody reads at least at a 3rd grade level, and that 3rd graders can learn to read at that level. How do you feel about that? How do you respond to his attack on your insistence that the way to change the wealth gap is to make sure people can read?
Well, that was only one part of the statement, obviously. That's not the only thing. And Mayor Baraka himself has also said that 3rd grade reading is critical for people to move into. He said
that last year, but this year he said.
This year maybe. I think he still thinks it. I think he still thinks it.
Fun of you this year.
Yeah. So, and also, you know, it's things like, I think the reason I like that is because it's a good measurement, so we can say, like, this is what we can do to address some of the learning loss we've seen in our state. And that's an inflection point, because if you can't read at 3rd grade, you can't move into science and math, etc. But it's not just that. It's building out housing. It's addressing some of the systemic inequities that we've seen across our state. And so some of the focus I've had on building out housing is because right now we have a decision in place that's been in place for 50 years that was set up to address affordable housing and historic redlining in the state. And it's really not done enough on either. We have segregated school systems. We have an affordability crisis. And what I think as governor we need to do to create opportunity to make sure that everybody can sort of get involved in the success of our state is to make the state affordable for everyone. And New Jersey is never going to be more affordable if we don't make housing more affordable.
So we only have about a minute left, but I wanted to ask you about your concern about social media and the need to have warning labels so that people know what's going on.
So right now we have a crisis with our kids online. And I can tell you that because I have 4 teenagers. I've been seeing it get worse and worse and worse over the years.
So a warning label?
So I think what we have to do on some, but really we have to get more transparency on the algorithms, where they're driving our kids to. Sometimes it's eating disorders, sometimes it's mental health. We know the more time kids spend online, the more likely they are to have mental health issues, and parents need help.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but we'll be right back to sort out the ever-spinning world of politics.